Hi, welcome to Insider Training Special Edition, brought to you by wantmoreleads.com. Today, we're going to be talking about the NAR settled now what. This is kind of a brief uh, thing that I do an hour-long core CE presentation, but this is kind of just a short summary of it. So let's get started. So my favorite quote, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. I just love that quote. So today we're going to be talking about mindset, rule changes, process, and conversations, and contracts we'll talk about in a future video, probably next week. So let's get started. First, I want to talk about the buffalo and the cow. A lot of you may have heard this. It floats around the internet. So when a storm is coming, the cow actually runs away from the storm, winds up running in the same direction, and spends more time in the storm. Where on the other hand, a buffalo turns around and runs right to the storm. And so because they're going the opposite direction, they spend less time in the storm. And so you got to just, let's turn around and face this storm and get through it. Okay. So here's your mindset. You got to decide today, is this a problem or an opportunity? So if you just stick with problem, you're just going to be miserable. Okay. If you decide this is a problem, your life is going to be miserable. So make this an opportunity. So anytime there's a major fundamental shift in an industry, it's a golden opportunity. We won't spend a lot of time on that, but just decide today which it's going to be. So let's go over some of the basic rule changes. This is only talking about 4 things. There's a bunch more, but these are there's 2 main ones that we deal with. So the first one is no offer of buyer broker compensation allowed in the MLS and a realtor MLS. Again, if you're not a member of the NAR, then none of this applies to you. And so people say, well, let's leave the NAR. My opinion is, well, let's stick around because part of the settlement is we're protected. So if you leave the NAR, then you come out from underneath that protection. So my suggestion is let the dust settle. Let's, figure out which way the wind's blowing for a while, maybe a year or 2, who knows? So you can't create a non-MLS mechanism, portal, social group, etc., for the purpose of listing brokers. And the key word is brokers making compensation offers to buyer brokers. So you can't have a third-party website where all brokers go or many brokers go and offer compensation. Buyer broker compensation can be listed on a brokerage or an agent website for the broker's listings only. That's why you can't have a group where everybody goes. And so buyer broker must have the buyer sign an agreement and negotiate fees prior to showing property. So the 2 big ones for us that we have to adapt to is the no offer compensation and getting a contract signed up front. So for Utah, it's always been a law. So now we're just, but Utah, the Utah division, they only required it to be signed prior to making an offer. That they felt that that's where agency was starting to take place. So we got 2 process changes. So the 2 main ones are, number 1, you must determine upfront in writing what, if any, compensation you're going to be paid. So you need to get a hold of the listing broker and say, hey, is there a compensation? And yes, how much? And I need to get it in writing. And if you don't get it in writing, then you have to put your offer compensation. You have to put your compensation, not offer. You have to put your commission in the REPSI. And you can either do that by, an addendum, or the division is updating the REPSI, supposedly, that'll come out soon, where you can actually do that in the REPSI. So that's the number 1 process change. You have to determine upfront what, if any, compensation is being offered to you by the listing broker. And you got to get it in writing. And so the next one is you got to get an agreement signed up front. Like I said before, the division, Utah, this is not a stretch. It's just an adjustment. Now I think it's either 26 or 36 states that don't even use buyer agency. So that's a big change for a lot of people. For us, it's not that much. And so those are your 2 process changes. You got to get over it. This face the storm, run straight ahead. Conversation. So there's conversations with your buyers. We simply have to disclose that Utah law requires an agency contract, and the recent lawsuit settlement requires it. And then, so you always get the objection, well, the other agent said I didn't have to sign a contract. And my script for that is simply, well, can I tell you why that makes me nervous? And if they say, yeah, then you say, well, so here's the thing. If the other agent, the fact that it's the law that they have to have a contract signed, so the other agent's either willingly violating the law or they don't know the law. Either one should make you nervous. Okay. So that's how you handle that conversation. Okay. Next conversation with the seller. Seller says, I don't want to pay enough to compensate another broker. So, so the seller doesn't want to pay that. And you say, great. So we need to explain how the whole compensation flow works. Now that buyers are required to sign a contract prior to seeing your property, so before they look at your property, they owe a broker commission on any property they buy. So now that the lawsuit has forced that, and Utah law is now supporting it, so now that they have to have that, we have to explain to sellers that the buyers now have to pay their broker, and which means if most buyers won't have the money, they won't have the money for a down payment, closing cost, and paying a broker compensation. So, in my opinion, that if the seller is not offering buyer broker compensation, they're going to eliminate most buyers. Now, there's no rule to say what that is. So, anyway, so we don't want to talk about specific numbers or anything like that. But I think the conversation needs to be had with the seller that, do you think you'll net more money with fewer buyers looking at your house or more buyers looking at your house? So the more buyers looking at your property, the more the potential to net more money is there. So there's no scientific fact. I mean, there is a science behind it, but it's not a scientific fact. So, however, if you eliminate a lot of buyers, which I think this would, then the seller could potentially net less money. So that's kind of that conversation. That's how I would handle that. So that's all we're going to talk about today. So if you have any questions, there's my information. Just reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you about anything. And remember, we'll have a future follow-up video about our new contracts. If you have any questions, just call me anytime. Thanks. Make it an awesome day.